third question. Our pastor's daughter is pregnant after a hookup and is considering placing the baby for adoption. Some in our church are treating it like shame or failure. How can we better model what it means to truly value both mother and child?
Mm. Well, here again, we've got an example of you don't want people making decisions in isolation. And women who are choosing to keep the baby after a very, especially if it's a situation where she's pretty well known in the church as being the pastor's daughter, she needs to be rewarded, not validated for the choices that she makes, but rewarded for not terminating the pregnancy and for being willing to, in essence, kind of be a public, she's going to be a public example of a lot of this. She's going to have to go through 9 months of scrutiny. She is taking on a pretty significant social cost to protect this child's right to life. So she deserves a lot of intimacy in terms of emotional closeness from the congregation. I don't think anybody needs to tell that girl, hey, you made a mistake. She's probably telling herself that over and over and over and over. And so you, as somebody that has probably known her for a long time, has the joy and the privilege of saying, you belong with us. You belong with us. You don't have to look anywhere else. You don't have to go outside of this church for support and love. You stay with us. We are going to cheer you on. And maybe even get to the point where she feels like, with the help of her parents, she could raise the baby and keep the baby if she feels like that's what she wants to do. An environment of shame and condemnation is not going to lead her to clear decision making, and that's ultimately not going to redound to the benefit of the child either.
Yeah, I love. We interviewed organization, I think it was Love Life, and they talk about houses of refuge, and that was a statement that churches would read explicitly once a year to say, if you are in an unplanned pregnancy or if any of these situations have happened, you are welcome here. You will have support. And that's not this like progressive liberal thing of saying we don't have boundaries or teaching around what God's ideal for our sexual practice would be, which is within the Christian church, a married man to a married woman and they have sex and have babies. Great. That is the ideal. And these other things are not the ideal. So it's not pretending it's not a mistake or you didn't mess up, but to say, even though you did, we will support you in choosing life. And so I think that's such a great thing to explicitly share. And like you said, people don't usually need to be reminded that they messed up, but the temptation is that you figure out you're pregnant at whatever weeks, I don't know, 13, 14, and to go get it taken care of so you don't get caught. And then you could have, okay, now I've preserved my reputation, my parents' reputation. And the hard thing is sometimes that seems more plausible than just telling the truth because of what it's going to bring down on your family. So it is a pretty tricky situation, but I like that encouragement that as a church, that's the thing. Some of our sin is very exposed and public, and a lot of our sin is very private and nobody's going to know about it. And we can take the people who are publicly messed up. Well, they're pregnant. We know they messed up. That's a lot worse than what I have going on inside, but God doesn't actually treat it that way.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that there are, again, two errors that we can fall into as Christians, individually, but also as churches corporately. And it is all justice or all mercy. I mean, you can be a church that just hammers, this is true, this is right, this is good, to the point where people feel like they cannot be vulnerable about the areas where they have sinned or struggled. Or you can err so much on the side of mercy where you don't want people to feel uncomfortable. You never want them to feel like they can't come to you or talk about how they've struggled or their weaknesses or their failures. So you don't mention the justice. You don't talk about the ideal. You do not say that there is an unflinching standard to which we must align. And both of those are errors. If you are hoping to be a biblical Christian or a biblical body, local body of Christ, you need to do all of it. You need to do all the justice and you need to do all the mercy. You don't get to decide. You can't put your foot on one side. Now, that's very hard because most of us are predisposed to either one or the other. Most of us are either sort of like truth tellers or grace givers. And it is hard to do both, especially when one of those is going to stretch us in one way or another. It is often, as my husband used to talk about, like straddling a fence that's a little too high. You've got to keep a toe on mercy's side and you have to keep a toe on justice's side. But man, you are like on your tippy toes, and it's so much more comfortable to jump from one side or the other, because that would relieve the pressure of having to straddle that fence. But if you believe that God is your God and he speaks through his word, you cannot choose. You as an individual and as a local body must do both justice and mercy, and do it with all of your heart every day of the week. We all have to do 100% justice, 100% of mercy, 100% of the time.